There is a particular kind of silence that follows you into a room. Someone smiles at you, asks how your week has been, laughs at the right moments, and yet something in you tightens. Quietly, like a door closing somewhere in the back of the house. You cannot name it. You have no proof. But some part of you, older than language, has already noticed what the smile is covering. Why does the body know before the mind is willing to admit it? Why does a feeling arrive fully formed, with no evidence attached, and simply wait for you to catch up? Before we explore this together, subscribe to this channel where we uncover the hidden psychology behind everyday life. Carl Jung spent much of his life studying the gap between what a person shows and what a person is. He called the visible part the persona, the mask worn to meet the world, polished and agreeable, built for approval rather than truth. But behind every mask, Jung argued, there is a shadow, the part of the self too uncomfortable to display, too inconvenient to admit. And what if the mask you keep sensing on someone else is not a mystery at all, but simply their shadow, pressing quietly against the seams of their persona? Picture a mask carved so skillfully that even candlelight cannot find its edges. From the front, it smiles without flaw. But masks are worn by faces, and faces move a flicker at the corner of the eye, a pause half a second too long, a warmth that never quite reaches the fingertips. The mask holds. The face beneath it does not. And you, without meaning to, have been reading that difference your whole life. So what does it actually look like when someone dislikes you, but refuses to let it show? Not shouting. Not confrontation. Something quieter, and in some ways, more corrosive. The first sign is a compliment that arrives slightly crooked, praise that technically says something kind but leaves you feeling smaller instead of seen. You're brave for wearing that. I wish I could be as relaxed as you about your career. Why would kindness leave a residue behind it? Because it was never kindness in its pure form, it was the shadow, borrowing the language of the persona to slip past your defenses unnoticed. The second sign is the vanishing act of memory. You mention something important to you, and it disappears from their mind entirely, again and again, though they remember far more forgettable details from far less significant people. Is this simply carelessness? Or is forgetting, in this case, a quiet decision the person has made without ever admitting it to themselves? The third sign is the eyes that arrive a moment late. The smile appears instantly, trained and automatic, but the eyes, the part of the face hardest to control, take a fraction of a second longer to follow. Jung might have said the persona can be rehearsed, but the shadow has its own timing, and it does not rehearse. The fourth sign is enthusiasm that only exists in public. In a group, they defend you, laugh loudly at your jokes, perform closeness like a duet. Alone with you, the warmth thins into something functional, polite, and strangely tired. Why does closeness only exist as a performance and disappear the moment the audience leaves? Perhaps because the persona is built for an audience, and without one, there is nothing left to maintain it. The fifth sign is competitive silence. You share good news, and rather than joy, there is a pause, small, almost undetectable, but present, like a held breath before a forced exhale of congratulations. Why does someone's happiness cost another person something? Alfred Adler believed that much of human behavior is shaped by an underlying feeling of inferiority, and the discomfort we feel around another's success often has less to do with them, and more to do with a private, unspoken comparison we did not choose to make. The sixth sign is the subtle exclusion, never dramatic enough to name, never obvious enough to confront. The invitation that arrives a day too late. The conversation that changes shape slightly when you walk in. Nothing you could point to in a sentence. Everything you can feel in a room. But here is the question worth sitting with longer than any of the six. Why does this matter so much to you? Why does the possibility of being disliked settle so heavily when indifference from a stranger would barely register at all? Perhaps it is not really about them. Perhaps it is about an old, quiet fear that if someone sees you closely enough, they will not like what they find a fear planted long before this particular person ever entered your life. And if that is true, then what you are sensing in them may only be the surface. What you are afraid of is something underneath yourself. Consider a tree in late autumn, its branches bare, its leaves gone, standing in a field that looks, from a distance, like loss. But beneath the surface, where nothing can be seen, the roots are widening, reaching further than they ever did in summer, preparing the tree for a spring no one can yet observe. Is bareness always what it appears to be? Or can it be the visible cost of invisible growth? This is the turn worth making. Gently, right here, what feels like rejection, distance, or a mask you cannot fully see through might not be happening to punish you. It might be happening to teach you something the easier moments never could. Jung called this individuation the long, uneven process of becoming who you actually are, rather than who you were trained to perform. And individuation rarely announces itself with comfort. It tends to arrive first as confusion, then as discomfort, and only much later as clarity. So what do you do with a suspicion you cannot prove? This is where the observer becomes essential, the quiet witness inside you that notices a feeling without immediately becoming it. Not the part of you that reacts, defends, or spirals into imagined confrontations at 2 a.m. The part that simply watches. The part that can say, calmly, I notice I feel small around this person, without needing to resolve why in that same instant. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it new vocabulary. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, not for an audience, reminding himself again and again that it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Can you feel the coldness of someone's mask without immediately deciding what it means about your worth? Can you notice, rather than absorb? And here is something stranger still. This exact feeling, this exact pattern, has likely visited you before. Different face, different room, same quiet ache of sensing you are disliked, without evidence, without confrontation, without resolution. Why does life seem to repeat certain lessons in new disguises, as though it were circling back to a door you walked past too quickly the first time? Jung believed that whatever remains unconscious in us tends to reappear in our lives as what looks like fate, an event, a person, a pattern, arriving again and again, dressed differently each time, until we finally recognize what it has been trying to show us all along. Perhaps this is not the first mask you have ever sensed behind a smile. Perhaps it is only the latest version of a much older question you have not yet finished answering. Why do I fear being disliked more than I trust myself to survive it? Viktor Frankl, who studied meaning in the most unbearable of circumstances, believed that between what happens to us and how we respond, there is a space narrow, but real, and in that space lies our freedom. The mask someone wears in your presence is not yours to control, but the space between noticing it and being consumed by it, that space is entirely yours. So what would it actually look like to grow through this, rather than simply survive it? Not something loud, not something anyone else would necessarily notice from the outside. It might look like choosing peace over the exhausting need to be right about what someone else thinks of you. It might look like sitting alone in a quiet room and realizing, almost by surprise, that the silence no longer feels like loneliness. It might look like receiving someone's crooked compliment, recognizing it fully, and simply letting it pass through you without needing to respond to its hidden edge. It might look like no longer performing likability for people who have already decided how they feel, and discovering, underneath that release, something that resembles rest. None of this arrives with fanfare. Jung once suggested that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul, and if that is true, then simply being willing to sit with an uncomfortable feeling rather than immediately explaining it away might already be a quiet form of courage. Return, for a moment, to the mask. Imagine standing close enough now to see past its careful surface, not to expose the person wearing it, not to demand an explanation, but simply to understand that a mask exists because something beneath it does not yet feel safe enough to be shown. Does that change how heavy their coldness feels? Or does it simply become information rather than injury? And so we return to the deeper question underneath all 6 signs, underneath the compliments that don't quite land, the memory that conveniently fails, the eyes that arrive a beat too late. What actually remains of you when someone else's opinion is finally set down quietly and no longer carried? What remains when the performance ends, when the need for universal approval finally loosens its grip, when you are simply alone with yourself in an unlit room? Jung offered an answer that has outlived him by nearly a century. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Perhaps what you sensed behind that smile was never really about them at all. Perhaps it was an invitation, quiet, unglamorous, easy to miss, to finally stop asking to be liked by everyone and start asking to be known fully by yourself. If this resonated, subscribe to this channel and join us as we keep uncovering these hidden truths. What is one part of yourself you've been rediscovering recently? Write it in the comments below, and let the mask, wherever you find it, finally rest.